Thank you so much. It was really, it's really nice that you are a part of this conversation. Without a further delay, I just want to begin our question by understanding the uniqueness that is, associated with adoption of cloud lately. And then we have also seen businesses adopting end-to-end protection versus end-to-end encryption. So among these two, which would you rather, prefer? Which is the better solution? Which is the better way forward?
Well, I think I'll say all of the above, right?
Right.
We think about, the cloud. I think one things I always like to talk about is not a question of if people are going to the cloud. It's a question when they're going to the cloud. It's the future. And it's really how we really talk about of what's that transition look like, because there are changes of doing things on premise versus in the cloud. And their expectations are different. And they're also very, very positive. And that's one of the things for both protection and encryption, right? They're pretty much becoming commodities, right, and a baseline in the cloud.
Coming back to between end-to-end protection and end-to-end encryption, which is the better way forward?
Well, in a general sense, I think is how to have the end-to-end protection, but it's also the more complex, right? Is I think that the end-to-end encryption is just becoming kind of a standard thing, that from point to point encryption, it's always going to be in place. That who's not using HTTPS, right, to everything from an application or things like that, who's not having encryption for their storage in the cloud, what cloud provider doesn't provide encrypted storage. So it's really, that's just kind of a baseline capability. But I think as now looking forward is, if everyone has encryption, are you fully protected? Well, encryption is not the only protection that you need. So I think that's when you discuss end-to-end protection, that's actually more important.
Got it. Nicely said. So another thing, and I think you come across this question way often. This is about hiring veterans. You're a veteran yourself. And then, I think I've worked in companies, I've met people holding really senior positions in the industry who have been veterans. So how do you think veterans are a better fit, or do you think, why do you think there has been this inclination towards veterans, towards hiring, especially in the domain of cybersecurity?
I think this is a very interesting topic that I'm quite passionate about. Certainly, as a veteran myself, and many years ago, that how I was given an opportunity. I served in the service, voluntarily, and I was given the opportunity to join afterwards. But looking at the benefit to many companies is veterans, and certainly from many countries, but I'm speaking specifically to the U.S. is that veterans are a slice of society. It is a diverse and inclusive organization. It's a slice of society, and that's important as a start. The next thing is that really is one of the fundamentals of the U.S. military is really the common values and principles, right? It's about integrity. It's about honesty, right? It's about attention to detail. It's about passion, right? It's about ability to learn and adapt. And I think that you find that many companies are now realizing that, especially in cybersecurity, but in many other places, is that they need people that have the passion to learn, the people that are hungry, the people that are dedicated, the people that are loyal. And the veterans with the other elements of honesty, integrity, and passion, right, come into play. They're very, very strong hires. Even if they may not have the specific skill set you need on day one, they're used to always being trained and learning on the go.
Okay, great. I think this is probably not a part of the questionnaire, but coming to a couple of initiatives that you brought up with Oracle. How much of your background with the U.S. Navy and your stint helped you make decisions and initiate new technologies here with Oracle?
Well, I think one of the things that I always like to call out, for both my service and others is certainly in cybersecurity, we're under pressure, right? And certainly things go fast, you're under fire drill. And it's really is that how you can have the poise, the calm, right? The attention to detail to how do you operate under pressure, when under fire, if you will. And I think in high tech that happens very often. And I think that training is that how you operate and you use your muscle memory, you use your playbooks, you use your tools so that you can get through tough times times, right? Especially when there's stress or long hours in play. And that's one that really, jumps out, strongly to me. So that's a good starting point, actually.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think another thing that you have really been passionate about, I think what you always talk about is adoption of SaaS-based model for security. So from that point, do you think how much has SaaS really helped the industry over the years since its adoption, and how do you feel the industry has been progressing in this front?
I think it's been enormous progress, and I think it's really, both as a consumer of it as well as a vendor of it, right? I think it's very positive. What I mean by that is, always like using cybersecurity as an example, is that, today that, people want their systems to always be online, always available, always updated, always secure, always protected. And I think now, if a lot of businesses is that, do they have all the capabilities so that to ensure their systems are updated, they're patched, they're monitored 24/7, globally with the right experts? Can every small and medium business have a cybersecurity expert? Can they have someone monitoring their systems 24/7? Very, very difficult. And so are they really getting the value proposition, from their applications they're running versus operating those or having those as a SaaS, as a subscription, who does have the global resources, who does have the experts in all the various areas. And I think that's the transition that we all have to make. Just like some of us, I know it's not the best analogy, but as myself is, my car is like, cars are getting more complicated. Am I the best person to try to make a repair or change the oil, compared to things? I could do it, but the time and expertise I have and the cost is far more than it is to have the expert do it.
Yeah. Okay. That's the most simplistic way anyone has ever put SaaS to me ever. Okay. Now I think coming from SaaS to DevSecOps. Okay, several SaaS providers use DevSecOps to keep their applications, up to date for better functionality, among several other benefits. So, as a company, or wherever you are approaching vendors, what are the key factors that you think a company should keep in mind whenever they are about to invest in a SaaS model for security? And what is there a checklist that you think companies should have?
I think it's from a checklist is that I think, DevSecOps, sometimes it's a buzzword, and other times it's really about a model and a culture, right? And I think most companies are adopting it to a degree. And part of it is that, how you can really improve the overall life cycle and having things, shifted left and earlier, versus after the fact. But the biggest thing I like to say, and some people may be surprised, but I'm going to say, especially in SaaS or cloud environments, this is where audits and compliance come into play, is so that you no longer have, the hands-on, you own the box, you own the system, you own the people that are managing it. So how do you know that it's really up to date, right? Through a DevSecOps model and culture. Well, honestly, this is the purpose of third-party audits, third-party pen testing, third-party certifications, is really having that independent person that can provide you that confidence and trust that they are being performed the way you want them to be performed and they need to be performed. And that's something that is actually is actually the right thing to do. And even though people say security and audits never go together, but actually they do in this case.
Okay. So now that we are talking about DevSecOps, how much of a role has frameworks and regulations here, especially for the implementation of a good security architecture?
Well, I think this is actually a more complicated one, right? Certainly is. I think as you look at your major kind of audits and certifications like FedRAMP and PCI and HIPAA, and then we have some other regional ones. I think when you have the major ones, there is a lot of overlap with those, right? And I think that if you try to add on each individual regional one, each individual province or state or territory that wants another one, and there's 90% overlap, right? Is that helping, right? Or is or not, right? And I think that is like other laws, like we can see like EU digital signature laws, when saying every country wants their own law that has differences. That doesn't work very well. So I think it's how we focus on the most important and baseline ones versus trying to create very nuances that basically it creates bureaucracy and no real value.
Okay. Now that we are on the topic, how far do you think CMMC has come into play? Do you think organizations are taking that seriously? Do you think there has been a good amount of activity around the fact that the implementation of CMMC has been taking place throughout every single defense vendor?
I think it's a great question, and I think we're seeing some good progress on that, right? But I think it's still kind of, if I use my personal point of view, it's kind of still maturing to a degree, right? And I think that we're seeing some progress and alignment on that, but I don't know if it's fully mature yet, like we see like other historical things like FIPS 140-2.
Right.
But I think we're seeing the adoption and uptake on it, but I think it's going to take a little more time.
Okay. So do you think the adoption has been marred by probably a lot of bureaucratic issues, or there is still, the one that you mentioned about a significant overlap among several other things that is already missed, and several other framework? Or do you think there is this attitude among companies that they will wait until the regulations are properly out? So why do you think there's a delay?
I think there's an element of that. Certainly, I think there's 2 points or 3 points. One is certainly some people can get overwhelmed by the number of new ones or things that are occurring in this time. The second element is sometimes being first, right, is not necessarily the benefit, because when you're blazing the trail, you don't know the best path sometimes, versus actually being a good follower or a quick follower, seeing that, well, who helped blaze the trail and learn from those, and experiences.
Right.
And the third is you see the greater adoption. And sometimes that last part is also, you need people that are experienced in that area, and sometimes you need to have others do it first, so then you can get some of their talent to help you.
Got it. Okay. I think another topic that we can touch base upon, again, something that you always talk about, again, coming back to SaaS. Where is the future of SaaS headed right now? What are the newest trends that you have witnessed probably post the COVID era? How has SaaS changed from across 2020 till now, and where is it headed to?
I think 2 things. Certainly, as I mentioned before, that I think that many businesses are realizing that with talent shortage, labor shortage, a supply chain shortage, is actually maintaining things themselves, right? Compared to subscribing to cloud services and SaaS services, it makes much more sense now to go to the cloud, where they may have resisted in the past. That's one. The second thing now is, I think what we're starting to see, and something that we do here at Oracle, is it's embedding in that more of the overall broader services are more integrated and included in those SaaS services, versus being a whole menu. If you have to add A and B and C and D, all in your service to have an end-to-end solution now, versus it being, one inclusive purchase, one inclusive service, versus 10 different SKUs. And so I think, especially in security, we're starting to see the trend of more and more things being embedded and integrated, versus being separate add-ons that you have to add to have a secure solution in the cloud. Okay.
Lastly, identity and access management has come a long way over the last couple of years, and I think several experts also call it the new perimeter. Now, but then even right now, several organizations are still focusing on preventive control. So, why do you think the companies should change this approach? And then, what is your take on how access management and PAM and all those kind of things are going to be significant in the future?
I think they've always been significant, but I think the important thing now is that the maturity of the industry, is that the tools and the usability is improving enormously. If you think about 10, 15 years ago, saying multi-factor for all these various apps, multi-factor for email, multi-factor for application on the web, the usability, the performance, the reliability is very, very low. Now I think we've got much better tools, much better integration, much better standards across all the vendors and competitors, right? Is making it much more ubiquitous and becoming a standard. And I think we're now getting to a place now that everybody getting to a world that multi-factor is part of the overall culture, it's the overall usability, and the tools just work with that. And so I think that we're going to see that continued growth from that to more of the PAM and PIM capabilities in a standardized way. But it's going to take time, because there's still a lot of legacy applications, but I think we are making great progress.
from your perspective and from the companies that you have been servicing to, from among your clientele, how often do you think that there has been even now significant reliance on legacy app that innovation has become a hindrance?
I think this is an overall continuing problem, right? We can go back to general industry is that, why did many banks, not have HTTPS or, certificates on their websites? Is because, well, many people are using Windows XP, not even SPS, Service Pack 2, right? And so they had to support that. But we're seeing that a lot of businesses are still using these legacy applications that they only support TLS 1.0. They don't support even 1.1 or 1.2. And I think this is actually holding back. And so there are a lot of people look at various services and saying, why are you not even running TLS 1.3? Well, because there's so many legacy apps in all these smaller businesses that don't have the capabilities. Or let's go to the dentist office, right, where they're running Windows XP and Java, that has not been updated for 10 years. Is that really safe? But do they also have the capability to update their medical systems? And I think that's one of the ongoing problems in our industry.
Right. To touch base again, I think I think there is a saying. Most small businesses, SMEs are the biggest targeted vectors of late. And added to that, all the small businesses after an attack, shuts their shop within 6 months of cyber attack. So there is still a lot of lack of understanding there. So how can probably what are the ways to empower smaller companies? What are the ways to inculcate better cybersecurity awareness among them?
Great question. And certainly this kind of almost leads to a topic is that next month I'm speaking at Black Hat Middle East in Saudi Arabia next month. And one of the panels I'm going to be leading and moderating is about the retail in cybersecurity. And meaning by that is that, is this the time of the small and medium businesses where they say, hey, they have their retail workstations or, the medical, workstations or the dentist office, is this now not the time to say, move on from that and moving to, SaaS, cloud, services, to provide your retail services, to provide your imaging and your scheduling and your services. Because now I think, say a large portion of the world, not the entire world, but a large portion of the world, the internet connectivity, the reliability connection to the cloud is almost 100% reliable. And so moving away from these legacy systems that aren't patched and are at risk, for all these factors to, cloud-based systems. And I think that's really the kind of the choice and push that we need to make with some of these smaller businesses.
Great, nicely said. All right, thanks a ton, David. I think that's all I had. Do you have any closing notes that you want to talk about? Anything that you want to share?
Well, thanks again. Certainly, for the opportunity. I really appreciate, the dialogue and opportunity. And really, certainly, as the listeners out there is certainly in the U.S. space. If you're looking for new talent, you're looking for, you have shortages. Look at the veteran community because I think they can bring a lot to the table that I think you'll highly value and kind of an honor of their service as well.